Hi friends, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. So I'll introduce myself. I'm Sunil Joseph, associated with Edureka. I'm going to talk about principles of MVC for PHP developers. Principles of MVC for PHP developers. I'll give a small introduction about myself. As I told you, I'm Sunil Joseph. I'm in the software industry for almost 14 years, and I'm working in a top position in a well-known company. And because of the passion of sessions, I used to take sessions with Edureka, and today we are going to talk about some overview of why this MVC is required in our application development, or what is MVC, what is the principles of MVC in PHP developers. So everyone, can you hear me? Everyone, can you hear me? Vishant, Sunil, Sneha, Nilima, Mujamil, Mohit. So you can use the chat panel also. Yes, yes. Hope everyone can hear me. Yeah. Ajay, everyone. Well. Bhaskar, Arun. So let us enter into our topic. So some introduction. So what are the topics? What is the agenda of our webinar today? The agenda of our webinar is nothing but we are going to talk about the contents. What we are discussing is principles of MVC. For a PHP developer, we talk about challenges faced when designing an application without framework. Then we talk about MVC design pattern, logic behind MVC, dry and convention over configuration to design other way of implementing a program, MVC benefits. And in the end of the session, we'll have a small discussion. We'll have a practical implementation of whatever the things we discuss today about MVC. So we know we have got many applications are there. And one type of application is called as web application. Now, what is basically a web application? Web application is a request response application. A request response application. And every web application is nothing but a client server program. A web application is a request response application or a client server application. So we know servers are providing services to the client, and client machines are accessing the services provided by the server. Client is used for sending a request to the server, and server is providing. Hi Raghav, hi. So client programs are used for sending the request to the server, and server is providing the services to the client. So a web application is a request response application. In every web application, we have got normally client side programs as well as server side program. We will have client side programs as well as server side program. So client side programs are nothing but the programs present in the client machine used for sending a request to the server and also to get the response from server. Best example is browser, Skype. All these things are used for sending a request to the server and also to get the response from server. The same way, we got server side programs. The server side programs are used for receiving the request from client, process the request, and to give a response back. Server-side programs are used for receiving the request from client, process the request, and to give an appropriate response back. So when you talk about PHP, PHP is a server-side scripting language. PHP is a server-side scripting language, mainly used for server-side program in a web application. So web application contains client-side programs and server-side programs. PHP is a scripting language. That means pre-compilation is not required. Normally, if you're aware of Java program, or if you're aware of C program or a C++ program or a C# program, what we do is we write the program. What we do is we write a Java program, myapp.java. After writing this program, we compile this program. So we will convert this one to some other format. Then that object code we will execute. So that means for a Java program or a C# program or a C program, pre-compilation is required. What I use the term is pre-compilation is required. You need to pre-compile the program. After that only you can run the program. Whereas a scripting language program does not need to be pre-compiled. For example, if you talk about PHP, you talk about JSP, you talk about ASP, you write the program, run the program. That type of languages are nothing but scripting language. PHP is a scripting language mainly used for developing server-side programs in a web application. PHP is a scripting language mainly used for developing server-side programs in a web application. Now, what a server-side program has to do. So I'm talking about the first agenda of our webinar. That is nothing but challenges faced when designing an application. We are talking about a web application now. In our context, we are talking about web application. Challenges faced when designing an application without framework. So I'm trying to explain that. So we took PHP. It is a server-side program. So when you write a server-side program, what all things you have to do? The first thing is the server-side program has to receive the request from client. Receive the request from client. The server-side program has to receive the request from client. The second thing it has to do is it has to validate the data, what is received. The third thing it has to do is it has to process the request. The fourth thing is it has to give the response back to the client. Response back. So these are the four things every server-side program has to do. So for example, I opened the browser, client-side program. I'm sending a request to Edureka. I'm sending a request to Edureka.co. I'm sending a request to Edureka.co. When I send a request to Edureka.co, I'll get a response back. Request response application will get a response back. When we get the response, I'm able to send my username and password. So what we do is we'll send our username and password in the client's browser. So client-side program is nothing but browser. We open the browser and we will send a request to Edureka. This is our site. Whenever the people who register, those are the students of Edureka, knows that we have got a well furnished LMS, learning management system, with the case studies, with the presentation, with the recordings, with the assignment, with the solution to assignment, with the programs, everything is available. Later also you can go through that. So I'm just logging in. When I want to log in, I'll provide my username, what Edureka has given. My name is Sunil, and I'll give the password, something. So I'm in the client side. When I click on this sign in, these two things, this username and password, will be sent to server-side program, Edureka server-side program, and that server-side program will receive the request. What is that? Sunil's username and password server-side program will receive. So why we are talking about? We are talking about PHP. What is PHP? PHP is used for developing server-side programs in a web application. Server-side programs in a web application. A normal server-side program using PHP or Java, serverless, JSP, all the things has to do four things. One is receive the request from client. Another is validate the data. So I submitted the username and password. When I submit the username and password, whether that username is having a valid format, password contains so and so characters, all that checking will be done in the client side as well as in the server side. Validate the data, whether the format is correct or not. Then what username and password I submitted to Edureka, that server side program, if it is in PHP, they will connect to the database and check whether that particular username and password is available or not. If it is available, I can log in into, I can see my LMS, learning management system, with the case studies, all the things which I can see. If that username and password is not correct, appropriate response Edureka will give me that you are not an authorized user, the username or password is not correct, and that is what the response. So any server-side program, if you are aware of any server-side language, every server-side program, a traditional server-side program does these four things. What are they? Every server-side, just visualize. We have got hotmail.com or edureka.co, yahoo.com. They are having server-side program. What is their job? They will receive the request from client. They will receive the data submitted by the client. Then they will validate the data. Then they will process the request by connecting to the database and give the response back to the client. That is what a traditional web application is. So if you do a traditional web application like this, what are the limitations? What are the drawbacks? What are the drawbacks when you are developing an application without using a framework? What is framework? I'll talk about that framework. Now, what are the limitations of developing a program without using framework? We are writing everything in the same program itself. We are writing in the same program. In a single program, we are writing all that 4 things. Receiving the request from client, validation of data, process the request, giving a response back to the client. Everything is written in the same program itself, so that the complexity to develop an application is more. The complexity of the program is more. Many lines of code, receiving the data, receiving the request, validating the data, processing the request, giving the response, everything is written in the program itself. So the main problem comes is parallel programming cannot be done efficiently. So for example, in my team, in Sunil's team, I have got 2 members. One is Avanish is one member, Parul is another member, Sunil is another member. So if I assign a task to Avanish, Avanish has to do all the things. So Parul is free. So my project cannot be completed on time. So what I want is, I want to utilize both my team member services so that my project can be completed on time. That is not happening. One person has to write all the things there. So since it is a complex program, testing will be a big problem. Everything is in one place. If you make some changes in one part of the program, other part of the program will get affected. I cannot use this project for, this module for some other projects. Reusability chance is less. So like that, many issues are there whenever you write. Maybe you will get the output, but the main thing is it is not in a organized manner. If you do all the things in the same place, it is not in an organized manner. The client is interacting with a database program. Client is interacting with the database program. So we will send a request to the program which is working with the database. Security issue. So a lot of drawbacks are there when you are developing a program without a framework. So in order to overcome these limitations, many limitations are there. In order to overcome that limitations, some frameworks are introduced. Some design patterns are used. How to organize your program, that is called as a design pattern. Now the first point is challenges faced when designing an application without framework. I already told you that. So complexity in coding in straight PHP. If you write everything in PHP, it has got many spaghetti code we are writing. Those are aware of PHP, you know that in a PHP program we write HTML, we write PHP, all the things together. Even Java, JSP also we write all the things together. HTML, CSS, JavaScript, JSP statements, PHP statement. Every server-side program, HTML is a part. So we write all the things together, all type of queries together, all type of HTMLs inside the same program itself. So what is that called as? That is called as spaghetti code. What code? Spaghetti. S-P-A-G-H-E-T-T-I. Spaghetti code. We write everything together in the program. HTML and all will come. That's called as spaghetti code. So difficult to reuse the code. Once if one task is done for one project, that I cannot use it for some other project. You have to hard code everything from scratch, from first line onwards till the last line. You have to manually write. Nobody is there to help that. So when I talk about the framework, it will be clear what is hard code everything from scratch. Teamwork challenges, parallel programming cannot be done efficiently. Everything must be tested, which is difficult. Everything must be so beautiful diagrams. This Edureka is showing you everything to be tested. So this person is having a confusion what to do next. Everything to be tested. So this code is like that. Everything is written in the same program itself. Leads to disorganization. Our program is not in an organized manner. We cannot develop our application in a well-organized manner. It would lead to disorganization. We may not be able to develop our application in an organized manner. It will lead to disorganization. Beautiful picture that will tell you what is that disorganization. Change, I'll show you an example. I'll give you an example of this one, a real-time example with respect to Edureka itself. I'll try to explain. Change one thing. So some part of the program, if you change, we are writing everything in one program. If you make beautiful diagram, so if you change this brick, the complete thing will collapse. We cannot identify what is happening next. Change one thing, break another. So many drawbacks. So when you are developing an application without a framework, complexity in coding in straight PHP, it is not in an organized manner, hard code everything, it has got spaghetti code, teamwork, parallel programming cannot be done efficiently, everything must be tested, which is difficult, leads to disorganization, it is not in an organized manner. Change one thing, breaks the other thing. Now we have got something called design pattern. Design pattern is the way to organize a program in a proper manner. One another design pattern, many design patterns are there. One is singleton, another one design pattern. So design pattern is a way to organize, how to develop your program. A design pattern is a skeleton or a framework on which your application can be built. So how you develop your application, they will give you a structure. On top of that, we develop our application. One such design pattern is nothing but MVC. This is what the main topic of our discussion of our today's webinar of our 1 hour time. Model, view, controller. MVC. M for model, V for view, C for controller. So this is widely used in web application development. It is mainly used in web application development design pattern. MVC is acronym for model, view, controller. M stands for model, view, and V for view, C for controller. A software design pattern for developing web, mainly web application, and you can use desktop application, but mainly MVC is a framework used for, MVC is a design pattern used for developing well-architectured web application. In better words, in simple words, a better way of separating the logic of your application from the display. The better way to display the logic from the display, separating the logic. That is what MVC talks about. So what is basically this MVC is, it's actually developed in the year 1979 for developing an application in Smalltalk. You might be heard about that programming language, Smalltalk. And this person, you can read that, whatever the way you want, you can read it. That person has developed something for Smalltalk programming language. And what this MVC design pattern says is, separate everything. Separate everything. So in the previous case, what we discussed, everything is written in the same place itself. Now MVC design pattern says separate everything as model, view, controller. Separate everything, model, view, controller. Now what is model? When we say model, I just give a simple definition as data. You just understand model is nothing but data. Model is nothing but data. What is view? Presentation of data. Presentation of data. Model is data. View, presentation of data. Controller, intermediary between the model and the view. So model is nothing but data. So data, where the data is present in the database. So whatever things we are doing with the database, something like CRUD operation. Any project, if you talk about it, does CRUD operation. Any project, if you talk about a railway reservation or a hospital management or a LMS, learning management system of Edureka. So everywhere it does. Any project, if you talk about, every project does CRUD operation. What is CRUD? Create. R for retrieve. Update. Delete. Every project contains only mainly this one, CRUD operations. Create, or we can call it as inserting the data, retrieving the data, updating the data, deleting the data. Every project talks about only CRUD operation. That is nothing but data, mainly working with the database, which contains the business logic. Business logic of the application. Business logic of the application. Now view is presentation of data. What is coming to the client is called as view. What is coming to the client is called as view. And the controller is intermediary between the model and the view. Now, when you say view, for example, I want to check my mail in Hotmail. I'll just open, I will send a request to hotmail.com. I'll send a request to hotmail.com. When I send a request to hotmail.com, I'll get a page back. This is one view. This is one view. Same like Edureka, what we've seen, we will get a page back. And this is the place I will enter the username and password. So this is one view. This is one view. What is one view? This login page is one view. Who sent this view? Server sent. To whom it has sent? To the client. What is the purpose of this? This is used by the client to submit the data to the server. So what is view? The view is used by the client to submit the data to server. The view is used by the client to submit the data to the server. Now, if I enter my username and if I enter my password and if I click on sign in, if it is correct username and password, what I will get? I'll get all my mails back. All my mails back. That is, server is giving the data back to the client. So views are of two types. One is the view used by the client to submit the data to the server, and another is the view used by the server to give a response back to the client. The view used by the server to give a response back to the client. So in simple words, what is coming to the client side is called as view. Two types. One is view used by the client to submit the data. Login page I showed you. Once I log in, the user, if I provide the username and password, it will go to the server. Server will give all the mails to us. I can see my mails. So presentation of data to the client. Model, working with the database. Everyone, are you getting something? Swapnil Kumar, I feel that your mic is not working. Can you give some quick response whether you are understanding something about this? Can you give a response back, quick response? Everyone, are you able to hear me and you are able to understand what I'm talking? You can use the chat window to give a response back. Are you able to understand? Fine. Shop is ready, says Amul. Okay, thanks Amul. Yeah. So because we have got short time, I wish to interact with everyone because we have got short time. So we will continue with our topic, and in the end of the session, we'll have a discussion. Okay? Yeah, please. Fine. So model data. Model is nothing but presentation of data. Okay, model is nothing but working with the data. View, presentation of data, hotmail.com. I showed you controller, intermediary between the view and the model. So what is the flow of this application? Normally, client will send a request to the server with the help of view. Client will send a request to server with the help of view. Now what MVC says is all the requests should come to the controller. All the requests should come to the controller. So client will, so for example, in our login page itself, what is happening? We have got client side. This is client. This is server. Something like a three-tier architecture. This is database. So what client does is client sends a request to server in the using a browser. This is client's browser. This is client's browser. Client sends a request. This is server. And below one, this is web server. And this is database. So client will send a request to server. Now where the request will come? The request will come to controller. The request will come to, all requests will come to controller. Controller will understand the request of the client. Yeah, Dilip Kumar, we will discuss about that. You can send a query. If you're a student of Edureka, you can send. I'll come back to you. Okay? Sure, we'll do that. OCA_connect. OCA_connect. We'll come back. Dilip. Yeah. So controller, no, Dilip is having a query related with the PHP, so I'll clarify that later. Yeah. Client is sending, coming back to our topic, client is sending a request to the controller. All the requests will come to controller. Previously, in a traditional application using PHP or any language, client is sending a request to the database program. But now all the requests will come to the client. Client will forward that request to the view or MVC model. Model works with the database, view, and this thing, model, view, controller. So client will send a request to the server. The request will come to controller. The request will come to controller. Controller will forward the request to the view or to the model. So controller will understand what is the request of the client. So client is sending a request to controller. Maybe for the first time, client's request is for login page. So normally client will send a request. Each request from the client is called as action. Just remember this term, action. Request from the client. So client's request may be for login. Login is an action. The request from the client is called as action. Request from the client is called as an action. So client's request is coming to the controller. Controller will forward the request to the corresponding view, normally first time. So first time client is sending a request for login page. So login.html or something, client sends a request. Request will come to the controller. Controller will understand what is the request of the client and it is forwarded to the corresponding view. And the view will give the response back to client, and it is nothing but the response. This is a response. Client will send response back. Now this response is nothing but the login page. Now this page is used by the client to send the username and password. That page is used by the client to send the username and password. It is used by the client. It is in the client's browser only. Same like Hotmail, when we send a request, what we got. It is used by the client to send a request. Now this is username and password is coming. Controller will access the required model. Model is working with the database. This is what the database we have. It will work with the database. It may perform the CRUD operation. It may save the data, retrieve the data, update the data, delete the data. It will perform the database operation. And the model will give the data back. Suppose username and password is correct. Now that model will fetch all the data and the data will be given to the controller, and that controller will forward that data to the view. The controller will forward the data to the view, and the view will present the data. The view will present the data to the client. It will be rendered in a proper manner. It will be rendered. It will be converted to the view, will present it to the client. So this is what basic MVC, model view controller. So client sends a request to all the, when you see this diagram, you can understand all the requests and responses are through controller. With the knowledge of the controller only, everything will happen. Now, I'll just give you a simple example. Edureka's example itself. Whenever a session is there in Edureka, normally Edureka is the controller. The participants or the students or the people who wish to attend the class, they will interact with the controller. Now in this case, Sunil is the model, I am the model, or all our esteemed guest of panel of faculties are the model. They have got the data. They are ready to deliver the things in a proper manner to the, in a professional manner to the participants. So in our case, Sunil is the model. If this MVC architecture is not applied, what will happen? You are the client, you will interact with the model directly. So it's not a secured manner, then it's not an organized manner. So controller will not know, Edureka will not know how many people are attending PHP class, how many people are attending the seminar of webinar, what is the financial part involved in that. So controller will not have any idea. Edureka will not know what is happening. But what is happening now, everything is through Edureka. Edureka will decide who has to take the session. Edureka will decide whatever the queries are there from the participant. So this client is a participant, controller is Edureka, view is presentation, that software is what we are using, model is the distinguished panel of faculties are the model. So it is in an organized manner. So controller will have the clear picture about what is happening in Edureka. What are the sessions there? Hundreds of batches we have, hundreds of students we have. So everything the management knows, the Edureka knows that. So that is what MVC. So this application or this design pattern is used for developing our application in a well-organized manner. MVC design pattern. So everything is separated. When you see this diagram, the view. So what I can do, I told you in my team I have got 3 members. Sunil is 1 member, Avanish is another member, Parul is another person. 3 members of the team. So if I give the task of developing a view to Parul, she will develop that. If Avanish is developing the model, Avanish will develop. I can take care of the controller. So whatever things Parul is doing in view, It is not affecting any other controller or model. If Parul makes any changes in the view, it will not affect the model or controller. If Avanish makes some changes in model, it will not affect any other part. And Avanish does not know whatever the data is given to the controller, what data what is done by that data controller, what the controller will do with that data, what view will do with that data. Avanish will not know. Avanish is a model. He do not know. Once the data is given to model, what model is doing with that data, view do not know. They are all independent component. And whatever the views we are designing for one project can be used in some other projects also. In different projects also, we can use that. That is what MVC. In any language, if we talk about PHP, MVC comes into picture in our syllabus itself. PHP with the we change the syllabus to PHP with the Cake PHP, MVC. Beautiful thing. Cake PHP, Zen framework, Laravel, Symfony, many Y frameworks. Many frameworks are there in PHP based on MVC. Java, if you talk about struts, you might have heard about struts or Spring Web MVC or .NET MVC, MVC5 latest version. So every web technology is working based on MVC to develop the application in a well-organized manner, well-architectured manner. Everything is used for designing the application in a well-architectured manner. Dilip, I will come back to you. So it's not out of our context. It's not a regular session. We'll talking about a seminar. I'll come back to you. Yeah. So this is what MVC, model view controller. MVC, model view controller. So model is data layer, view user interface layer, controller interacts with the model, intermediary between the view and the controller. So what is the flow? Using a view, client will send a request to the controller. To the server, it will come to the controller. Controller will receive the request that will be forwarded to the view or to the model. Model will work with the database, fetch the data, or it will do the database operation, give the data back to the controller. Controller will forward the data to the view, and that view will render the data in a format to the client. So this is what beautiful diagram. If you want, you can keep this view to the client side also. So this is one person, website user. They are sending a request to mywebsite.com. using a browser. They will use this URL in the browser. So browser HTTP request object is created, that is fired to the controller. Controller will work with the view or it will work with the database. Data object request model. Model will work with the database. Database request response handled by framework hidden from user. Important point. Handled by framework hidden from user. That is nothing but framework. Framework will provide all the things to you. You just specify what you want to do. So normally in a traditional MySQL or Oracle or SQL Server PHP with any of these databases, you need to connect to the database MySQL_connect, MySQL_connect, new PDO, different ways you can connect to MySQL database. So Dilip has asked me how to connect to Oracle. We can, if you want, you can use ODBC, ODBC_connect, OCI_connect, new PDO in brackets ODBC, full colon, DSN name, data source name we can provide. So we need to write the code for connecting to the database, selecting the database, generate the SQL query, pass the SQL query, get the result. But in the case of framework, you just say insert or save, depends upon the framework. If it is Zen framework, we'll say insert. If it is Cake PHP, we will say save, different methods. So only that is what it is written, handled by framework, hidden from user. And the data object response will come back, and that response is given to the view. This way application is working on. So client is sending a request to the view, and that view will be returned back to the client. MVC in a beautiful manner. So what are the different steps involved in this? The model, data access routines and some business logic can be defined in the model. Working with the database, only one word you understand, working with the database, inserting the data, retrieving the data, updating the data, deleting the data. Model is responsible for providing the data from the database and saving the data into the data store, including deletion, updation, all the things. Models are active representation of database tables. They can connect to your database, query it if instructed to do so by a controller, and save data to the database. Everything, whatever database operations are there, everything is done by the model. Every database operation is done by the model. No interaction between models and views. All the logic is handled by controller. Even model also can do the logic. That's called as business logic. Then What are done by the controller, normally it is called as application logic. We'll talk about that in the regular session. So only one point from this slide. What is model in MVC? Model is data. What is this data? That is nothing but working with the database, storing the data, retrieving, updating, deleting. That's what the model we talk about. Then view. View defines exactly what is presented to the user. What is coming to the client side is called as view. The presentation of data to the client. So what view does? It collects data from the user. First step. And gives it to controller. Second step. Controller invokes the required model or view. Third step. Controller pass data to each view to render in some format. So model will give the data back to the controller. Controller pass data to each view to render in some format. That's what the diagram we have seen. So client sends a request, HTTP request, controller, forward the data to the model. Model will work with the database, fetch the data or whatever the database operation what controller is asking, give the response back, render the data, and the response will come back to the client view. Controller binds the whole pattern together. Intermediary between the view and model. The view is not interacting with the model directly. That is in the previous traditional web application. Controller is intermediary between view and model. Controllers contain the logic of your application logic. Each controller can offer different functionality. Controllers retrieve and modify data by accessing database tables through model, and they register variables and objects which can be used in views. Controller will have some variable. So name, $name in PHP, those are aware of, $name is equal to Edureka. That name can be used by the view. The name can be used, whatever the variables are there, so that when we study the program, we will understand clearly. Now once request is received from client, it executes appropriate business logic from the model, decide which view to display based on the user's request and other factors, pass along the data that each view will need, and hand off control to another controller entirely. Some cases, some controller will forward the data to another controller also. Controller is, when you come to the program, it is nothing but a normal class. Forward the data. MVC. Model. What is model? Data. What is view? What is coming to the client or presentation of data? What is controller? Intermediary between the view and the model. The view will send the data or the request to the controller. Controller will receive the request. It will understand which model to be accessed. It will forward that to the model. Model will work with the database. It will give the response back to the controller. Controller will forward the data to the corresponding view, and the view will render that data to client. That is what MVC, model view controller. Yeah, Swapnil Kumar. Yeah, it will be done, Swapnil. You can be in touch with support at edureka.co. Support at edureka.co. You can give a query. They will give you the recorded sessions and all. Yeah, I'll come back to that. So MVC, model view controller. Now there is another principle called, so MVC or any PHP based framework says there is something called dry. Dry is nothing but don't repeat yourself. It's a principle, programming principle we have, dry. And convention over name or something is there. Dry. Do not repeat yourself. So simple words. Don't write the repeated codes in different programs, or don't write the same programming statements in different programs. Programs. Don't repeat yourself. Don't write the same code in different places. If, for example, I'm defining a class as something like index controller. Class index controller. One controller, the home controller. Index controller, some logic will be there. Another controller, class accounts controller. Class accounts controller. Something like class pages controller. So these are all child class of something. So maybe whatever the code you are writing in this code, in this controller, may be same as some of the codes will be same. So don't write this code same. You write this code in the super class of index controller in one place if this is extended from something. So these are all child classes. It is extended from some controller. You write it in that place and access it. Don't repeat the code. Don't repeat yourself or don't repeat the code. That's what dry talks about. Dry just means don't repeat yourself. Make sure that when you write code, you only write it one time. Simple words. Make sure that when you write program or code, you only write it one time. If you find yourself writing similar functionality in all of your controller classes, make a base controller class that has a functionality and then inherit from it, or move the functionality into another class and call it from there instead of repeating it in all the controllers. Don't repeat the code. Dry. It's only a design principle. Whenever you're writing a program, repeated thing, don't repeat the code. That is what dry principle. The same way, another principle, convention over configuration or coding by convention. We also call it as coding by convention, is a software design rule or paradigm which seeks to decrease number of decisions on developers, gain simplicity, not losing flexibility. Forget about all these things. Simple thing. Whatever names we are using will have a corresponding, every name has got a corresponding meaning. For example, if there is a class sale in the model, understand this, if there is a class sale in the model, the corresponding table in the database is called sales. Simple. So whenever if I write a class called student, for example, I write a class in the model. Model is what? Working with the database. If I write a class called student in the model working with the database, what is the meaning of that? This framework knows that, there is a database table called, or corresponding database table is students. Student is a class and it's a model class. So suppose in Cake PHP, I'll write it as extends app model. Extends app model. So student in singular form, the database table name will be students. That's what the same thing. And the controller name will be students controller. Simple. Students controller will be the controller name. So table name, each database table corresponding controller will come. So naming by convention or convention over configuration. So very simple, such as calling the table product sales, that one needs to write one code regarding that product, some other thing. So naming convention, so each name matches with some other entity in the program, convention over configuration. So what are the benefits of that? If you're working, so we've seen the limitation, but if you develop the application using MVC, what are the advantages of that? MVC benefits are separation of concern. Everything is separated. View, model, controller, everything is separated. Parallel development. I told you the example. Sunil, Parul, Avanish. Avanish will work on model, Parul will work on view, and Sunil will work on controller. Change accommodation, multiple view support, highly organized and maintainable. So in simple words, MVC is a design pattern used mainly in web application development, used for developing your application in a well architectured manner. Full stop. MVC is a design pattern used for developing your web application in a well organized manner. Everything is the presentation and the logic, everything is being separated. MVC. Model, view, controller. So this is what we talk about MVC. What is MVC? What is the purpose of MVC is what you need to understand. Got some idea about this MVC? Got some idea about this MVC? Can you respond, please? Can you respond? Vishant, Swapnil, Sunil, Subhash, Sunil, same. Satish Kumar. Yeah. Got some idea what is MVC? Should be fruitful. Swapnil, I'm having some issue with the internet connection. Okay, Swapnil, I cleared that. Yeah, right. Thanks, Vishant. Yeah, I'll just a simple example. I'll try to demonstrate now. A very simple example, a simple PHP program. If you are aware of that PHP, you can understand that. So what I show is I've got many applications, but simple application will take. So what I have is I'm using a web server as XAMPP. No, Manish, MVC is a design pattern. Using that, we have got framework. Manish is asking MVC is type of framework. Okay, it is frameworks are based on MVC. MVC is a design pattern. How to develop your application. Manish, am I clear? Manish Dimri. Manish, can you respond back? Fine, right, Manish. Now, I'll just show you a simple example. I've got many examples out there, but for the based on the time to have some basic idea, what we do, just to have an idea, controller is intermediary between the view and the model. So what controller I'm having? So basically in any MVC architecture, or MVC based project, or in a framework like Zen framework or Cake PHP or any of the Y and all, what happens is there will be a class, a controller class will be there. Class index controller. Extend some based upon the class. So if it is a Cake PHP, it is app controller. If it is Zen framework, Zen underscore controller, some classes, index controller. This is one controller. Every controller contains different action. Every controller contains different action requests from the client. So that is nothing but a function, a public function index. It will have the business logic. This is in Cake PHP. If we do it as a Zen framework or any other framework, we'll have another controller, same controller, index action name will be there. It depends upon the framework. Both are doing the same thing, index action. That term also will come. So in Cake PHP, index, public, void, login. Here in the case of Zen framework, it will be public function, not void, sorry, void in Java. Public function, login. It's PHP we are talking about. Here it will be, what will be the action name? Public function, login action. Simple. Login action. We'll write the, we'll have model working with the database and all will be there. So two things I talked about in Zen framework or Laravel anywhere. Index controller extends app controller. Here it is not extends app controller. It is Zen underscore controller something. I don't remember that Zen underscore controller something. So that is coming superclass. So controller is a class. No, Vishant, this is not predefined. Vishant is having a query. So these functions, no, these are all actions. I'm coming to that. You give me 2 minutes time. I'll make it clear. So this is one action. This thing. Cut this. I'll write it in the separate section. Whatever. Go on. Okay. So we'll work with the Cake PHP's case. So extends app controller. So we are writing this. We are writing app controller is defined. Superclass is defined. Index, we are defining our action. What is action? Request from the client. So this is that, the action. And every action has got a corresponding view that is available in the views folder. Controllers are available in the controllers folder. Views are available in the views folder. So what is there inside the views folder? What is a controller name? Index. And what is the name of the action? Index action. So index.phtml or HTML or any of the things. PHTML or which is a PHP-HTML. So that view will be there. Index.phtml. You see the naming convention. So what will be there for login action? What will be there for login action? The view will be view slash index. What is index? Controller name slash login dot corresponding view. Login dot view. Now, whenever the client sends a request, what is the request? http:// edureka.com / whatever the port number / app name or app context, application name / index/index or only index. I given it as index/index. So what is the first index? Controller name. What is the second index? Action name. It is for presentation. PHP HTML. Manish, PHP HTML. PHP code and HTML is coming there. It's a view what is coming to the client side. So client is sending a request like this. So you understand this. This is one application name. What is that? Whatever the application it is. Index, first index is controller name. Second index is action name. So what is the flow of this application? It will come to the index controller. It will go to the index action. Whatever things are written here that will execute. After that, from here it will go to index.html. From there, the response will come back to client. Please go through that. We have the client is sending a request like this. Whenever the client is sending a request like this, it will come to the index controller. From that index controller, it will be forwarded to the corresponding action. What is the requested action? Index. So it will come to index. It will do the business logic. From there, it will go to the corresponding view index.html. You recollect what we discussed about MVC. And it will use, the controller will use a model working with the database. Now, whenever the client sends a request as HTTP, same URL, up to index is okay. Copy. /login. /login. So what happens? Client is sending a request to that application. Which controller? Index controller. Which action? Login action. So what happens? It will come to that index controller. From there, it will go to login action. From that, whatever the logic is given, it will execute. And from there, it will go to login.html and or any server. It may be HTML, whatever it is. It will come back to the client side. You don't need to say in login function that you go to login.php, HTML. It will automatically go. That is what framework does. This is what, understand, controller action. It will come to the corresponding action. It depends upon the framework. So I'm talking about a framework, Zen framework or Cake PHP or Symphony, Doctrine, Symphony, Y framework, Laravel, latest one. So different frameworks. This is what the flow. Controller, everything is organized in different folders. Controllers are available in controller folder. Models are available in model folder. Views are available in views folder. I'll show you a simple example. It's not based on framework. We develop our own application. What is that? One simple example to display something. So index.php. What we do? Controller, creating an object of controller and invoke. So any MVC based framework, the request should come to the controller. Make sure that request is coming to the controller and make sure your model or the view, it will be taken care of. It will not be accessed by the client directly. All requests will come to the controller. Controller is equal to new controller. Say controller is a class. Let us have a look into the controller. So first is client is sending a request to this. So actually controller name / I'll show you another example. Model is using. Controller is a class. This is our user defined class. Public model. Constructor. That means whenever we create an object of this controller, where we create an object of this controller in index.php. Controller is equal to new controller. When you create an object of this controller class, automatically that controller's constructor will be called. This is PHP 5 constructor. So there what we do, we are creating an object of the model. $this tends to model. Model is a variable, is equal to new model in the constructor. And index.php is calling the invoke method. It will come to this invoke, getting the details of this. Now let us see model, controller, model, model.php, book.php. This is entity class. So in this place, in the place of book, you can consider it as database. I'm not showing with a database. A simple example to understand what is a flow. It's not a well organized MVC framework, just to have a basic idea. So class book is nothing but entity, a record. A book object is nothing but a record. Database contains table, table contains entities, entities contains attributes. So class book, it has got title, author. You can consider it as database. In the constructor, we are creating an object of book. That's all, an entity. A book is an entity. It's nothing but each book object is a record in the database table. Model, class model, include once model underscore book.php, entity, class model, get book list. What it is doing, it is, if it is a normal program, we are only hard coding the data in this case just to have a demonstration. But in a real-time scenario, it is working with the database. It will fetch all the things. If it is a MVC and all, I mean, if it is a cake PHP, we will say $this, that means controller tends to model. Suppose student is a model class working with the database table, tends find all over. It is equal to, those who are aware of SQL, select star from EMP or select star from students. Student is model, which is a table name, students. $this tends to, student tends to find all. It is equal to select star from students. If it is Zen framework or any other framework, we'll say $this tends to the corresponding model, whatever the model name is there, that model name object tends to, that model name tends to fetch all. It will fetch all the records. So that same thing is implemented here. So whenever you say get book list, PHP, new book, creating an object, whenever you create an object, it will come to the constructor and that book object is created, PHP, Sunil Joseph, web application development. This is actually to be done by the database server. Android, new book, Android, Avanish, mobile application development, what type of book it is. Oracle, new book, Oracle, Parul, database application development, 3 objects. So client is sending a request to model, controller. Now what is left out? The view, MVC, view, presentation of data. View book.php is one presentation. For each action, corresponding naming is required, but this is a simple example to show something. So this will display all the things. Actually, this point is what you need to understand. Controller, index, login, retrieve all the data. Index.php. So index, so whenever the client is sending a request like this, index controller, index action, it will go to that corresponding action, method function. From there, it will go to the corresponding view, index.html. So all the display, all the records are being displayed. Yeah, Vishal, right, 1 minute. So controller, index. So this is nothing but booklist.php. Then another is view book, one particular book detail we want to have. One particular book detail we want to have. So whenever the complete books are being displayed, we given an anchor tag. Have you noticed that? href is equal to index.php question mark. This is simple. There's no controller. There's no action is given. We are only hard coding the things. Index.php question mark is equal to book 10 title. Anchor tag, hyperlink. So I'll place this in our server directory, the same program, MVC or any name. I am working with the XAMPP. I'm working with the XAMPP, XAMPP. In htdocs, I'll place that directory paste. MVC we placed. So we got an application. htdocs is a server directory, document directory where the server-side programs should be placed. The directory where the server-side programs should be placed is that. I'm opening XAMPP XAMPP control panel. Let me start the server. My Apache web server is running in the port of 8082.80.8082. HTTPS 443 Apache server. We don't want to have any database in this context. Let me open the browser. I'm opening Firefox, any browser. Now we'll send a request to http:// http:// a simple application, localhost 8082. What this program will do, it will display, or it has to display, all these book objects, get book list method, all these 3 books to be displayed where PHP, Android, Oracle, hyperlinks are given. So whenever the client is sending a request to this, it will come to the index.php program, the enter router. It will come to the dispatcher. It will come to invoke method of the controller. Invoke method of the controller. Anyway, model is created. It is checking whether book is set or not. First time it is not set. It will go to this one, book is equal to, model is equal to, book is equal to, $this tends to, model tends to get book of that particular book, include view.php. If it is not set, first time, sorry, if it is not set, no book value is given, what happens? Invoke will get all the book list. Get book list from the model. Model is nothing but this one. It will return all the 3 books, and that all the 3 books are being displayed. All the 3 books are being displayed in booklist.php that we are including. So all the 3 books will come. So I'm just sending a request to 8082. What is our context name? MVC. That's enough. By default, it will send a request to index.php. There we are creating a controller object, and it is calling the invoke method. Press enter. These are the books. I use some CSS. Simple CSS I use, because of that it's looking like that. We use some simple CSS, mystyle.css. You can have layout and all, many things are there in MVC. This is as a demo. I'm just showing model view controller. So in a real program case, we'll understand clearly what is that. Only one thing, don't concentrate much on this program. What I showed before, that is flow, controller name, and action name. So we are getting all that. These are the objects that we created in the model. You consume, I mean, you understand that this is coming from the database, but we have not done it from the database. We did it in the same program itself. In the model itself, hard-coded the data. Actually, it should retrieve from the database. Normally in a MVC-based framework, we will get the data only all, find all, or fetch all. That method will be used, and it will fetch all the data, and it will be presented. Now, PHP. That book details will come. You see in the status bar URL, question mark, book is equal to PHP. PHP details are being displayed. Get book list. Sunil Joseph, web application development. There is no back button and all we given. Android, Avanish, mobile application development. The details are coming. MVC. I'll just show you another example. This is a simple case to understand. I'll show you another simple case where we work with the database also. What is that application is? PHP underscore MVC underscore blog. So blog mainly pages, and as well as it's a big project. I'll just show you only the output of that, what is actually happening. So what we do is in HT docs, we'll paste it. PHP underscore MVC underscore blog. Index.php. There we are getting the controller name, getting the action name. There we are getting the controller name and action name. If it is set, we are getting that. If it is not set, controller is pages, action is home. Controller is pages, action is home. That's what we discussed before. Require layout also. Controller / action. Now I'll create one simple database also for this. I'll create a simple database. You give me 1 minute time. Database name is PHP underscore MVC. I'll come to MySQL. Command prompt itself. We can use PHP myadmin also. We'll just create a database with the name of PHP underscore MVC. XAMPP /MySQL /bin MySQL -u. No other user, root user we are using. Create database PHP underscore MVC. One database we created. Use PHP underscore MVC. Activating the database, and we will create a table with the name of post. ID, integer primary key, auto increment, that means automatically values will come. You don't need to provide author and content text value, some data. DSC post. DSC post. We are having that post. So no records are there at present. Select star from post. No records are there. So we got a database called PHP underscore MVC. Coming to our project, if any records are there, it should be showed. If nothing is there, it should be showed as page. So two type of controller. What? Two type of controller. One is pages controller and another one is post controller. So post controller is coming from the database. Now I got one config file where we provide the database details, connection.php. Inside configs folder, we have given connection.php. edit plus. Have you seen? I given it as private. This constructor, normally constructor will not be declared as private. Those are aware of Java and all, you know, constructors are not declared as private, but why we given it as private means I don't want anyone to create a direct object of database. Only one instance of database connection is sufficient. That is the reason why we are not providing that DB constructor. And clone is another way. Get instance, I'm using PDO. So Dilip, if Dilip is there, you can see this. This is how we are working with the database. Forget about this one. Just see only this thing. $self current class scope resolution instance is equal to instance is static variable. New MySQL PDO connection, PHP data object, host localhost, database name PHP MVC, root username is root, password is nothing. Forget about that exception. So connection with the database. Connection with the database. Then coming to controller, so we have seen index. Let me close all the things. Yeah, Dilip. Okay, right. Now Dilip has asked me a query. That is the reason why I just told. Index.php. Two controllers by default. If any controller name you have passed, that will be the controller and action. URL is like that. Connection.php. Otherwise, pages and home. Require layout. We got the controller. Which are the two controllers? Pages underscore controller. But in a normal programming, P capital, camel cased. Normally controller names will be camel cased. What is camel case? Camel, you know. So each two words are there. So camel case means the first word, first letter will be in capital letter. Second word, first letter will be in capital letter. P capital, C capital. That's a normal way. Anyway, this is like this. You practice in that way. Pages controller. Now, what is home? Home is action. So what is the way to access this home action? http://localhost 8082 / what is the application name? PHP underscore MVC underscore blog / pages controller / home. Pages controller / home. So that is what is coming by default. You see, controller name is pages, action is home. So in short time, Dilip, that we'll study. We will configure it in our system itself. You can go to that Windows 7 in the system directory. There is a file called host. That file we can change it. So I know that. No worries. I'll tell you that. Hope you are also aware of that, Dilip. Is it? Yeah. I'll come back to you. So controller, pages, action, home by default. So this is what pages controller. You see, pages controller. So this is what the actual controller name. Program name is in a different way. Pages underscore. This is called as camel case. Pages, C capital. Home is the action. So I written my name, Sunil Joseph. Show that. Pages controller. Then what is post controller? What are the actions? Index action, post all. So post, where is post? Post may be the model. Inside the model, post is there. Post model, all. It's a static method. It will fetch all the data from the post and it will display all the post. Find a particular post. ID is given. Select star from post. So now what I do is layout and all we can work on it. It will be presented. There's no much design on that. So we placed it in htdocs. Have we placed it in htdocs? Yes. What is the application name? PHP underscore MVC underscore blog. So we'll open the browser. Send a request to PHP underscore MVC underscore blog. When I press enter, have we given, it will come to index.php. We have not given any controller name. We have not given any action name. So which will be the controller? By default, they will take it as controller as pages and action as home. So what will happen? It will come to home. Then what it will display? It will display first name, last name, and it will go to the view. View / pages, controller name. That's what I told you before. It will go to the controller name. View action. It will go to the view. And what is the view name? Inside pages, home.php. It will display hello there. First name Sunil, last name, what is given there? So whatever the variables are there in the controller is able to be accessed by the view and error corresponding thing. So I'm sending a request to this one. I'll get a message. Hello there. Sunil Joseph, hello there Sunil Joseph, first name, last name. You successfully landed on the home page. So we have not given any post name. That's the reason why it's coming here. Now if you click on post anchor tag, what is the controller you see here? Controller is equal to post. Actually slash post controller and action is equal to index. There is no post here. Index. So what index does? What post controller index action does? Post controller index action will retrieve all the records, but there is no records. So we will insert some record into this. Insert into post value. Only two values because ID is auto increment. Author, content, values. Author is Avanish. Thanks to all the people who participated in today's webinar. So I'm just inserting. So Avanish has given a post. Avanish has given a post. When Avanish has given a post, select star from post. This is one record. ID is 1. Now when you refresh this, what will come? Avanish see content. One post has come. If Sunil is also giving a post, insert it into values, Sunil. Oh. Thanks from my side too. Now when you refresh, how many posts are there? 2 posts are there. It is coming from the fetching from the database. So see content. So what is the controller name? Post. What is the action name? Show. With the ID 1. Controller action request from the client. This is a requested post. Avanish, thanks to all the people who participated in today's webinar on behalf of Edureka. See content. Thanks from my side too. So this is what one simple example. So once you join in our PHP course, you will have a more clarity on that. Because of our time constraint, we need to wind up now. So that's from my side related with the principles of MVC, design pattern MVC in PHP application development. We given some simple example. So understand what is MVC. So the outcome of this webinar should be, you should have a clear understanding of what is MVC, what is model. Forget about the application. That's only a demonstration I given. What is my MVC? What is model? What is view? What is controller? That's from my side. And always welcome to have your queries, please. Any queries if you're having, you can ask that. If I can solve that in this short span, I'll do that. Yeah, any queries from your side? Anyone? Is Dilip is available now? Dilip. Yeah, somebody asked me how to configure this in this one. There's a file called host, and if you're working on Windows, yeah, Dilip. Yeah, right. So you can go to that host file, and you can. Okay, Dilip has asked the same question. You can go to host file, and you can give IP address and some URL mapping. That's called as DNS, domain name system. Dilip, am I clear? Am I clear to you? DNS. Yeah, fine. Vishant, did Vishant ask me some question? Can you run the program? Okay, that we have done. Manish, okay. Anyone else? Any queries? Any queries? Any quick queries? Dilip, you can talk to Edureka. You can send a mail to support@edureka.co. Anytime you can send a mail to, in this presentation itself, they might have given. Anytime you can send, you can go to edureka.co/PHP. It's not only PHP, any course. We are providing all courses, all excellent faculties, excellent 24/7 support, every support. Even lifelong. In my knowledge, it is lifelong. You will have the LMS. Once you log in into LMS, you will have the clear understanding of, when I joined us first time, I got surprised. So beautiful things are there. it will be helpful with the case studies, assignment, presentation, recording, everything is available. And I think it is support at edureka.co or any of these things, Facebook. Ask Edureka for queries, use Ask Edureka for queries. You can go to the site and you can ask for that. Yeah. One question, give me a list of supporting website. I have to check it out, Dilip Kumar. Dilip. So in the session, we'll discuss if it is there. Yeah. Yeah, right, Sunil. Yeah, Sunil to Sunil. Okay, thank you. Yeah. This is what the thing, and I request you to give the feedback. That's what the last slide is talking about. And thank you. Yeah, maybe feedback will be there. Yeah, right, Dilip. Yeah. So that's from my side. Any queries? Any queries? So we'll wind up. Hope that you can join, and any time, any technical support, you can get it from Edureka, support at Edureka, or you can visit our site always. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. On behalf of Sunil, on behalf of Mr. Avinash, and on behalf of Edureka especially, we thank you, extend our heartfelt gratitude to all the people who spent this much time with us. So thank you very much. Thank you. Have a good day. Good night. All the things. Thank you. Bye. Thank you. Thanks, Dilip. Thanks, Amul. Thanks, Amul. Yeah. Thank you. Anyone, any queries? Right. So that's the end of the session for today. Any queries, you can be in touch with the support at edureka.co. Thank you. Bye-bye.